Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I will present about leadership and conflict. I'm Muhammad Firdaus bin Masri. For the question 1 is discuss the accuracy of the following statement. Women are less effective than men in leadership position because they tend to rely too much on the supportive style of leadership. So for the for the definition of leadership is influencing, motivating and enabling others to contribute towards the effectiveness and success of the organizations of which they are members from mentioned 2010. So leadership also is the ability to inspire confidence and support among the people of whose competence and commitment performance depends, from Dublin 1997. Process whereby an individual influences others to achieve common goals, from Robert 2007. So for the leadership perspective is first is competency perspective, second behavior perspective, third contingency perspective, fourth transformational perspective, and last is implicit leadership perspective. So for the leader behavior perspective, there are two perspective. For the first is people-oriented behavior. For the first is showing mutual trust and respect, concern for employee needs, and third is desire to look out for employee welfare. For the task-oriented behavior is assign specific tasks. Second is ensure employees follow the rules, and third is set the stretch goal. For the contingencies perspective of leadership is the contingencies of perspective of leadership is based on the idea that most appropriate leadership style depends on the situation. Leader must be able to adapt their behavior and style to the immediate situations, and typically they have preferred style. It takes considerable effort for leader to choose the enact different styles to match the situation. So for the Park goal theory of leadership states that effective leader must ensure that employees who perform their job well receive more valued rewards than those who perform poorly. Effective leaders also provide the information, support and other resources necessary to help their employee complete their tasks. In other words, Park's goal theory advocates servant leadership. For the Park's goal leadership, for the first is directive. Directive is task-oriented behavior. Second is supportive, is people-oriented behavior, and third is participative, which is encourage employee involvement, and last is achievement style, using goal setting and positive self-fulfilling prophecy. Next is comparison between directive and supportive style. In this style, the leader's behavior provides psychological support and for subordinates. The leader is friendly and approachable, makes the work more pleasant, treats employees with equal respect, and shows concern for the status, needs and well-being of employees. Supportive leadership is the same as people-oriented leadership, described yearly and reflect the benefits of social support to help employees cope with stressful. For the participative is leadership behaviors encourage facilitate subordinate involvement in decision beyond their normal work activities. The leader consults with employees, asks for their suggestion and takes these ideas into serious consideration before making a decision. Participation leadership relates to involving employees in decisions. For the gender and leadership, with respect to the gender, studies in field setting have generally found the male and female leaders do not differ in their levels of task-oriented or people-oriented leadership. The main explanation is that real-world jobs require similar behavior from male and female jobs incumbents. Next is the increase of women in the workforce has generated much interest in understanding the similarities and differences in female and male leaders. The meta-analysis and a series of studies conducted by consultants across the country uncovered the following differences. So next is the first is men and women were seen as displaying more tasks and social leadership respectively. And second is men and women were equally assertive. Next is women executive when rated by their peers, managers and direct reports scored higher than their male counterparts on a variety of effectiveness. Women use a more democratic or participative style than men, and men use a more autocratic and directive style than women. So the reason why women are participative style compared to boys, girls often raised to be more egalitarian and less status oriented, which is consistent with being participative. And second is there is also some evidence that women has somewhat better interpersonal skill than men, and this translates into their relatively greater use of participative leadership style. And last is subordinates on the basis on their own gender stereotypes is expect female leaders to be more participative, so female leader comply with followers' expectation to some extent. Back to the question, it crystal clearly shows that the statement women are less effective than men in leadership position because they tend to rely too much on the supportive style of leadership is not accurate. First, the effective leader do not depend on the gender of the leader. However, women leaders are continue to face limitation of leadership through the gender stereotypes and prototypes of the leaders and are held by followers. Second is it is not because women leaders are depending too much on the supportive leadership style. The fact is women do adopt a participative leadership more readily than their male counterparts. No matter what kind of path the goal leadership style in used in not determine the effectiveness of leadership, this style is depend on the situation to determine whether the leader is effective or not. This is because more appropriate leadership style depend on the situation. This is where the leader must choose the next different style to match the situation. The leader must have high emotional intelligence to diagnose the circumstance and match the behavior. Lastly, the fact is that followers have expectation about how leaders should act, and negative evaluation may go to leaders who deviate from those expectations. Culture also shapes the leader's values and norms, which influence his or her decisions and actions. Culture values also shape the expectation that followers have of their leaders. In Malaysia, female managers were not seen as effective in the leadership style they adopted in their roles because of cultural influence. Cultural influences are therefore likely to impact on the way women and men behave in the workplace, particularly when roles of authority and power are evident and the way in which that behavior will be evaluated by others. In conclusion, the statement women are less effective than men in leadership positions because they tend to rely too much on the supportive of style of leadership is not accurate. To what extent these stereotypes of men and women leaders are true is difficult to judge. A more important issue is how to capitalize on both male and female leadership tendencies. Other than that, both female and male leaders must be sensitive to the fact that followers have expectations about how leaders should act, and negative evaluation may go to leaders who deviate from those expectations. Okay, thank you. I will present to Muhammad Nur Salahuddin.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you my friend Muhammad Firdaus. Okay, then I will proceed for the question 2. Okay, the question 2 is a few years ago, a clothing retailer was expanding rapidly, so the CEO hired several executives from large corporation. Unfortunately, the new executive clashed with the current executive regarding business strategy. The CEO explained, "We ended up with an old team and a new team and they were not on the same wavelength. Identify the sources of conflict in this situation and identify the two strategies to minimize this conflict in the future." Okay, basically I will summarize for the case. Okay, the case is the CEO of clothing retailer was hired several executive from last corporation in order to expand their product, but unfortunately the new executive and current executive cannot give cooperation to each other, which is they are not cooperate together in order to achieve the same goals by using the differences of business strategy. So that the CEO had explained that the old team and the new team could not end up with the same level. Okay, I will proceed for the conflict. Okay, actually, conflict is a process in which one party perceives that his or her interests are being opposed or negatively affected by another party. This is by the McShane and Van Gleno. A conflict has two current perspectives, which is first constructive conflict and second is relationship conflict. Okay, constructive conflict is a type of conflict in which people focus their discussion on the issue while maintaining the respect for people having other points of view, and they normally aim at issue, not individual. The second one is a relationship conflict, which is a type of conflict in which people focus on characteristics of other individuals rather than on the issue as the source of the conflict. Normally, it aims at undermining the other party. Okay. Next is the sources of conflict. There are three sources of conflict, which are first, interdependence, second, communication problems, and third, differentiation. Okay, the interdependence. Okay, the interdependence exists when all the team members must share a common input to their individual tasks, which is need to interact in the process of executing their work or receive outcomes that are partly determined by the performance of others. Okay, for example, a few years ago, a clothing retailer was expanding rapidly, so the CEO hired several executives from large corporations. The next is communication problems. Okay, the communication problems often occurs due to the lack of opportunity, ability, or motivation to communicate effectively. The causes of communication problems is when the two parties lack opportunity to communicate to each other, which is each person tends to rely more on stereotypes to understand the other party in the conflict. And some people also lack the necessary skills to communicate in diplomatic, which is non-confrontational manner. For example, in this case, the CEO explained, we end up with an old team and a new team, and they were not on the same wavelength. This is the CEO did not have the actual good manner. Okay. The next is differentiation. Differentiation is differences among people, departments, and other entities regarding their training, values, belief, and experience. It is distinguished from goal comparability because two people or departments may agree on a common goal but have thoughtful difference on how to achieve the goal. For example, in this case, the new executive clash with the current executive regarding business strategy. And the strategies to overcome this conflict, firstly, is improve communication and understanding each other, and reducing differentiation. Okay, by the improved communication and understanding, it is how to solve the dysfunctional conflict, which is to give the conflicting parties more opportunities to communicate and understand each other. It should be applied only after differentiation between the two sides has been reduced, and only when differentiation is sufficiently low. By applying to this case, the CEO should briefly explain that the old team and the new team should work on the same wavelength in order to achieve the goals of the expanding clothing. Next is by the reducing differentiation. Okay, to reduce the difference that produced the conflict in the first place, the more employees think that they have common backgrounds or experience with co-workers, the more motivated they are to coordinate their activities and resolve conflict through constructive discussion with co-workers. By applying to this case, the new executive and the current executive should communicate more effectively in order to cooperate in achieving the goals regarding the business strategy that has been used, and they cannot make differentiation between them even though they think that they have common backgrounds with experience with the co-workers. As the conclusion, a conflict can produce undesirable outcomes so that it could be minimized and be solved. Too much conflict will cause a frustration in an organization. Apart from that, a moderate conflict can improve the decision making, team cohesion, and many more. Conflict can occur daily, so that it should be managed wisely to both employee and employer. Okay, thank you. That's all of our presentation. If you there anything question want to ask, you can ask us. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.